Hello and welcome to Called Bank Sports. Man, it's just been a rough past 10 games for the Jazz so far, hasn't it? It's been really hard to see them just struggling defensively. And frankly, tonight, man, while they had some offensive woes, the defense definitely did not help. And that's really the highlight. When you look at it, Washington, I believe, is one of the best, if not the best teams at getting into transition, but they shockingly are one of the worst teams at scoring in transition. So going to the fast break points, I'm really floored to see that Washington only had 12 because it just felt like they had way more than that. The Jazz only had 3, and that was because of a late 3-point shot by Royce O'Neal, I believe. So when you look at that disparity right there, that's 9 points. And how many points did you lose by? 9 points. So I mean, Washington does have one of the most high octane offenses in the league. They're consistently able to get up those points with Beal and Westbrook, who are both just volume scorers. The best example of that, I believe, is the like whatever the final score ended up being when they were able to beat the Nets. I believe it was like 140 plus 140 plus for each team. And while there might have been overtime, those numbers are just crazy to see. Those are all-star game level stats in a regular season against a playoff contender. So really, yeah, Washington's going to get theirs, but you need better defense. The Jazz are the number one half court defense in the league so far in the year. And they've just really fallen off a cliff. Starting with, I think, not the last game against Philadelphia, but the game before that when Joel Embiid wasn't on the court. It was nice to pick up a win against Boston on what day was that? The weeks are just blurring together. On Tuesday, and it really looked like the Jazz had got back in rhythm, but it's definitely just fallen off from there again. And the Jazz now have to fly from Washington, D.C. all the way to Tampa Bay and play Toronto tomorrow night, who's also on a losing streak. I believe they've lost their last 5, and frankly, you need to win, but Toronto's also primed for a win. I mean, they're at home. The Jazz are on the end of a back-to-back where they just lost the first game. It's not looking good for Utah overall, and it's really sad to be talking about a loss tonight when you have a season high from Donovan Mitchell with 42 points, which is respectable, but even more disappointing when you had Joe Ingles finally cross the 27-point mark. That's been his career high, and he's been hitting 27 points. I believe he's got it a couple times this year, and he finally hit it. He went 8 for 10 from 3. He was 1 away from breaking that Jazz single game record. It just ended up being wasted. And I apologize. I don't know what I just did on my computer. Everything just went blank. So I really hope I only said the curse word in my head. Apologies if I said that out loud. So thankfully this stream is still going. But yeah, just really rough, you know. And what it comes down to is Bojan. Bojan is not clicking. Tonight he was 0 for 6 from 3, 2 for 6 from inside the arc, and 2 for 2 from the line. He hasn't got back in rhythm. And on a night like tonight where there's no Mike Conley to really take the ball from him, we just need to see him do that. And it's been a really big struggle for him overall. So let me get to the comments here real quick and see if we can keep this going. I'm sorry, today's been a long day, and the Jazz losing definitely didn't help. But Will Jensen says, I'm done waiting. It's time to trade Bogey right now. I'm so sick of him just kissing shots and sucking on defense, or missing shots. That makes so much more sense. Yeah, I have a hard time with the Bogey thing. And It's a lot easier for you to convince me to trade Bogey when we talk about the Jazz being able to possibly get to the Western Conference Finals and then the NBA Finals. But after last year, after last year seeing Mike Conley not play well and seeing him become what he's become today, this year, is just something that I really expect to see Bojan come back. But the Jazz need Bojan if they're going to make it to the Western Conference Finals. And if they're going to make it to the NBA Finals this year, they need him to be playing well, and he's not. And he's definitely the most tradable piece on the Jazz because while other players have had on and off games and like Clarkson's had a rough stretch, Bojan has just had an absolutely terrible season. So let me just look at his stats overall. So he's averaging 15.4 points, which is actually tied 64th overall in the league. But we just need more from him. And games like tonight, it cost us his lack of defense. And while there was an overall lack of Jazz hustle, if Bojan has a better night and he puts us up his 15, the Jazz are in it. And really overall though, tonight, sorry, my brain's just kind of scattered right now, but tonight it was just really just an overall bad effort from the Jazz. And while I want to say Mitchell and Ingles did well, I didn't watch it, so I know obviously offensively they did great. But when you look at Donovan being -10, which is actually the worst plus minus for the Jazz is Clarkson at -12, and Mitchell's the second worst at -10. So he does need to pick up on some defense. It's overall just been really rough for the Jazz. And obviously they go through these stretches. Last year they had a stretch where they won like 20 of 21 or something crazy like that. And then they went on a 9-game losing streak. And while I don't expect to see the Jazz go on a 9-game losing streak, right now they've lost 5 of their last 7, I think. And while thankfully other teams in the NBA are falling, the Jazz are just really like taking a nosedive. When you look at what's currently happened with their projected record on 538, they're shockingly still projected to get the 1 seed by four games over the Suns. But if you drop the game to Toronto tomorrow, I don't see positive things happening for Utah from there. Sawyer Parker said in the chat, that game was not good. So many teams are trying to break the Jazz strategy and treating it like a playoff game because they're so good. Yeah, obviously they have the best record in the league still. Teams want to come in and they want to beat Utah, and so that's what they're trying to do. And you have Russell Westbrook, who, after a couple of circumstances in Utah where some fans said some things that I certainly do not condone, he definitely doesn't like Utah either. So he wants to beat them for that. He wants to beat them because they're the best team in the league right now. You have Bradley Beal, who, while he is the leading scorer in the NBA, is doing it on one of the worst teams, is still an elite level offensive player. So it's just been really, it was just, they put a lot of heart into the game tonight, and the Jazz just couldn't be bothered to run the court either way. They didn't get any points in transition, and they didn't stop the Wizards in transition. So from that perspective, you expect the Jazz to lose, and they did. Now, credit to the Jazz. Once they were down by 24, the fact that they got back in, that they were able to get it back to 7 twice, is super, super impressive. There is some heart there, and they did show some hustle being able to do that. Now, I would have loved to see them get back in it entirely and at least make there be a lead change, and that didn't happen. But they did keep playing through the whole game, and that's something that we need from Utah. Is we need them not just to give up. And while they did give up at points tonight, there were still highlights to this game and some good things to take away from it. So looking at the statistics, I actually think the most interesting thing is the Jazz, that the Wizards only shot 17 threes and they made 7 of them. So they were at 40+%, but it was not a lot of shots. And if you look at it, Warriors game aside where Steph Curry went off, it does seem that the games that the Jazz are losing is when the other team is able to either have some incredible paint, just a couple of incredible paint scorers, like the 76ers have Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. Most teams don't have, a pair of teammates who can get in and just score at will in the paint. Even when you have Gobert there, it's hard he can't guard two people at once. So that really hurts, but also just teams that can hit the long two. The Jazz do an amazing job at denying the three. They're the number one team in the league. But, when you have Bradley Beal, who, let me look at Beal's stats. He did definitely play well from the 3-point line. He was 4 for 6 from three, but he was 10 for 18 from two today, over 50%, which is amazing. And lots of those were not inside the paint. So the fact that he can just kind of put the Jazz in a limbo there, while that shot is losing a lot of favor in the NBA, it is a way that kind of breaks the Jazz. So overall, rough game. I'm really hoping that the Jazz are going to pick up a win against Toronto tomorrow. I'm actually going to be on the road listening to that one, driving back. So I'm going to end up listening to the Canadian broadcast of the Jazz Raptors game that's being played in Tampa Bay, Florida, when I'm in the state of Utah, just based on the radio signal I'm going to have, and I'm going to have to do Sirius XM. But man, I hope they can pick up a win tomorrow. I'm not confident in it, just with it being a back-to-back, and hopefully Conley's back tomorrow. If he's not, I don't think the Jazz are going to pull out a win. Will Jensen added, when Bogey is struggling, Quinn needs to play Erson or someone else. So I understand that from a winning tonight, that if the Jazz had brought in some other players and benched Bojan, they might have won tonight. Quinn's job right now, though, is to get Bojan back into form. Because if I had the option of having the 1 seed and having Bojan playing like he is right now, or having the 3 or the 4 seed going into the playoffs and having Bojan playing like he was at his peak last year, I would take the 3 or the 4 seed in a heartbeat, no questions asked. The Jazz need Bojan back. And I don't know how Utah works. I don't think Quinn is able to go to Dennis Lindsay and say, or Justin Zanuck and say, hey, trade Bojan. I think that's kind of separate, and Zanuck and Lindsay make their own choices, and they might talk to Snyder some, but I don't think that Quinn has any say in that. So right now, I do understand that Quinn needs to get Bojan back into form. That is his job, and Bojan's not going to start playing better from just being benched. So that's my take. I do think Bojan's only going to shoot his way out of this, if there's any way out of it. And so we're going to have games like tonight where he wasn't able to shoot at all. Where am I going? So I'm really excited for tomorrow. So I'm going to head to Vernal, Utah area and visit my grandparents. I got my second dose of the COVID-19 vaccine a couple weeks ago, since I work for a school district. And so I haven't seen them in over a year. And they got their shot a couple weeks ago too. And I have tomorrow off school. So I'm just really excited to go see them. So I need to get a few more things done before I go, but that's where I'm headed off to tomorrow. So I'm excited for that. And Sawyer said that they're going to St. George. Well, have fun in St. George. I hope that you're able to be safe down there and enjoy some warm weather. It's been nice to have some springtime weather up here in Salt Lake County for sure. So I think Ingles and Bogey are so similar. Bogey's more of an athlete than Ingles, is what I'd say on that one. And obviously that doesn't translate as much to as much defense as we want. But because of that, he's definitely more of an offensive prowess. So, man, I just wish we had Bogey from last year. If we had the Bogey who could go off for 20, 30 points at any given night, we'd just be a rung up. And all of these games where our defense struggled, he'd be able to, instead of being a liability on both ends of the court, at least make up for that impact on the offensive end. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I totally get the limited time window. Let's trade Bogey now. And we'll see what the Jazz decide to do. But you either need to trade Bogey for a really good defender who can shoot the three, and there's not a lot of those right now, or Bogey needs to get back in it. Like that's where the season hinges right now. I think the Jazz's defense is going to get back on track. I think Clarkson will kind of come out of his slump, but Bogey right now is just like the won't they trade him? Will he, won't he come back? Just something that people don't really know. Are we going to talk about Gobert taking that three though from Will Jensen? I mean, at least he took it. I wish he made it, but it's a corner three, but when you're shooting with less than 2 seconds left on the clock, just because it's that or a violation, wish it had went in. That maybe that swings the tide enough that we win tonight, but sadly it was not to be. Sawyer, I'm super stoked that you get to see your grandma. I know COVID's been really hard on people and separating families, so I'm super excited that you get to see your grandma this weekend. Yeah, it's like when Ingles was in a slump. He will get out of it soon. That was also from Sawyer. Yeah, so I'm interested. I'm interested if I want to see the Jazz just rest some guys. Obviously, Ingles rested a few games, came back just on fire. Absolutely has been amazing since. And maybe that's what Bogey needs. Maybe Bogey doesn't need to be benched. Maybe Bogey just needs to sit out a game or two, and the Jazz need to lose those, but he just needs to have a minute to breathe. I'm not sure if that's the best thing. Obviously, Quinn knows the players a lot more than I do and has a personal relationship there, but we'll see. But that's really just where the season hinges. And Ilyasova will hopefully see on the court soon. I don't know why. Well, I do know why you didn't put him out there tonight. Like, the Jazz did keep flirting with it, where if you get a stop and you get a 3-pointer, all of a sudden it's a 2-possession game, and maybe you could win it. Like, Washington handily won this game, but the Jazz did kind of keep sneaking into it. So that's my take on tonight's game. Hopefully I'll be able to do a better post game tomorrow night on the Toronto Raptors. But thank you so much for everyone tuning in. And if you're watching this later, please leave a like so more people can find our channel and subscribe. We do post games after every game, and we also do a weekly episode on Saturday. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in, and have a great night.